The air smelled different. It was crisp, tinged with roasted chestnuts from a nearby street vendor, and something metallic from the subway vent below. Nima inhaled deeply as she pulled her suitcase onto the university campus, her heart racing in her chest. Seoul was louder than anything she had known back home in Nairobi. Skyscrapers clawed the sky, their windows reflecting morning sunlight like shards of glass. People moved quickly, purposeful, their eyes often skimming past her as though she were invisible, or sometimes, as she'd begun to notice since stepping off the plane, too visible. Nima adjusted the strap of her heavy backpack and tried to ignore the stares. She knew she stood out, her ebony skin glistening under the sun, her thick black curls bouncing against her shoulders, her stride both hesitant and proud. She was a scholarship student, here to study international business at one of South Korea's most prestigious universities. It should have been a dream. Instead, by the time she reached the main campus gate, she already felt like an intruder. "Excuse me," she asked softly, approaching two girls in identical pastel cardigans. "Could you tell me where the administration building is?" The girls looked at her, their gazes sweeping from her shoes to her hair as though she were a strange artifact. One whispered something in Korean to the other, and they both giggled. The taller one finally spoke, slowly, enunciating like she was speaking to a child. "Admin is Tae-hyun. That way." She pointed vaguely to the left, her lips curling in something between mockery and disdain. Nima forced a smile. "Thank you." But as she walked away, she could still hear their giggles echoing behind her. The administration building was buzzing with new students. Nima waited in line, clutching her acceptance letter like it was a shield. She could feel eyes on her, curious, judgmental, some even hostile. When her turn came, the woman at the desk barely looked up. "Passport. Documents," she said curtly. Nima slid them across. The woman's brows rose slightly at her foreign name, and she muttered something under her breath in Korean that Nima couldn't catch. But she stamped the papers, handed her a student ID, and pointed her toward the dormitory office. It was done. She was officially a student here. Still, as she stepped outside, clutching the small plastic card with her picture on it, she felt a knot of unease tightening in her stomach. The dormitory was another ordeal. The lobby was crowded with students dragging suitcases, parents hovering nearby, RAs shouting instructions. Nima stood at the edge of the chaos until someone tapped her shoulder. "You're blocking the way." She turned and froze. The boy in front of her was tall, broad-shouldered, with light skin that seemed to glow under the fluorescent light, sharp jawline, and dark eyes that pierced right through her. His hair was styled in the kind of careless waves that looked expensive. He frowned at her, his lips curving in a sneer. "What? Don't understand Korean?" Nima swallowed. I'm sorry. I'll move." But as she stepped aside, he smirked, muttering loudly enough for those nearby to hear. "Figures. Foreigners never know where they belong." A few students chuckled. Heat rushed to Nima's cheeks. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor, but instead she lifted her chin and dragged her suitcase forward. The boy's laughter followed her. She didn't know his name yet, but she knew already. This was going to be harder than she thought. Later, she learned his name was Tae-hyun. It came from whispered gossip in the dorm hallway, from the way girls said it with sighs and sparkling eyes. He was not just handsome, he was popular, the son of a wealthy businessman, captain of the basketball team, the kind of boy who carried power in every step. And apparently he had decided to make her his target. The next few days were a blur of humiliation. Every time Nima tried to blend in, Tae-hyun seemed to notice. He mimicked her accent when she spoke in class. He made jokes about her skin tone loud enough for others to laugh. When she walked into the cafeteria, tray trembling in her hands, she once heard him say, "Careful, don't turn off the lights. We might lose her." Laughter erupted. Her throat burned, but she forced herself to sit at a corner table, eating quickly, swallowing back tears. That night, lying in her narrow dorm bed, Nima stared at the ceiling. Why did I come here? She could have stayed home, studied in Nairobi. She had friends there, family who loved her. Here she had no one, only sharp stares and cold whispers. But then she remembered her father's voice before she left. "You're destined for more, Nima. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." She rolled onto her side, clutching her pillow. She would endure. She had to. The following week, everything shifted. It was raining, the kind of relentless Seoul rain that turned the campus into a sea of umbrellas. Nima had none. She hadn't thought to pack one. She ran across the quad, her books clutched to her chest, when suddenly a group of boys blocked her path. It was Tae-hyun and his friends. "Well, look who it is," one of them said. Tae-hyun tilted his umbrella just enough for the rain to splash onto her. His smirk was cruel, but something flickered in his eyes that Nima couldn't read. "Running somewhere, foreigner?" Nima's voice shook, but she forced it out. "Leave me alone." One of his friends chuckled. "She talks back now." Tae-hyun's smirk deepened, but then, unexpectedly, he waved his friends off. "Enough. Let her go." They looked surprised but obeyed, scattering with lazy shrugs. For a moment it was just the two of them in the rain. Tae-hyun stepped closer, holding the umbrella over her now. The raindrops drummed against the fabric, an odd cocoon of quiet between them. "You should carry an umbrella," he said softly. Nima blinked, stunned. This was the same boy who had mocked her mercilessly? She didn't answer. She only stared, her heart thudding in her chest. Tae-hyun's gaze lingered on her face, unreadable, before he handed her the umbrella and walked away, the rain soaking his own hair. And just like that, the ground beneath her shifted. She didn't know it yet, but this was the beginning of something forbidden, dangerous, and utterly irresistible. The umbrella felt strangely heavy in Nima's hands. She stood there in the downpour, watching Tae-hyun's tall figure disappear into the mist of falling rain. Her curls clung to her cheeks, droplets sliding down her neck, yet she didn't move. What had just happened? He had mocked her for days, humiliated her, and now he had shielded her from the rain. Why? Her chest tightened with confusion and something else she didn't dare name. That night she couldn't sleep. She lay in bed listening to the patter of rain on the window, replaying his expression over and over. For the briefest moment, she thought she had seen vulnerability in his eyes. Something raw, almost tender. But maybe she was imagining it. Maybe he had only pitied her. Her roommate, a quiet girl named Soo-jin, turned over in her bed and muttered something in her sleep. Nima envied her. Everyone else seemed to belong here so easily, while Nima felt like she was walking through a world that constantly reminded her she didn't fit. Still, she gripped the umbrella's handle tighter where it rested beside her desk. She couldn't bring herself to return it. The next morning, campus buzzed as usual. Students hurried to classes, laughter echoed across the courtyard, and Nima kept her head down, clutching her books. In her business lecture, she sat at the back as always, but today something was different. Tae-hyun wasn't surrounded by his usual group. He walked in late, his hair damp as though he had just showered, and slid into the seat across the aisle from her. Nima froze. He didn't look at her, but she felt his presence like static electricity. Her pulse raced, and she forced herself to focus on the professor's words, scribbling notes furiously, though she barely registered them. Halfway through class, a paper airplane landed on her desk. She blinked, staring at it. Slowly, she unfolded the small square of paper. Inside, scrawled in sharp handwriting, were the words, "You kept my umbrella." Her heart stuttered. She looked up. Tae-hyun was leaning back in his chair, one eyebrow raised, the faintest curve of a smile on his lips. After class, Nima shoved the note into her book and hurried out. But he was faster. "Hey!" She stopped, her breath catching as he stepped into her path. Up close, his features were almost too perfect. Sharp cheekbones, full lips, eyes that seemed to see everything. "You kept it," he said again, his voice softer this time. Nima hesitated. "I meant to return it." "Then why didn't you?" Her lips parted, but no words came. Because she didn't know. Because some foolish part of her had wanted to hold onto it, as though it meant something. Tae-hyun studied her face, his gaze unreadable. Then he smirked faintly, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Keep it. Consider it a gift." Before she could reply, he walked past her, leaving her stunned once again. Days blurred into weeks. Slowly, imperceptibly, things shifted. Tae-hyun no longer mocked her in public. When his friends jeered, he told them to shut up. In group assignments, he volunteered to be in her team. Sometimes, she caught him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking. One evening in the library, she found herself sitting across from him at a long wooden table. "Do you always sit here?" he asked casually, flipping through a thick economics textbook. "It's quiet," she murmured. He smirked. "Quiet's boring. Not for me." For a moment, they were silent, the only sound the rustle of pages and the distant click of keyboards. Then Tae-hyun leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Do you hate me?" Nima looked up, startled. "What?" "You should," he said simply. "I was an ass." Her throat tightened. "You were." He chuckled softly, but there was no arrogance in it. Only something weary, like he was laughing at himself. "I don't know why He trailed off, shaking his head. "Forget it." Nima stared at him, confusion swirling inside her. Who was this version of Tae-hyun? Apologetic, almost gentle. She didn't answer, but for the first time she didn't feel the urge to run. That night, lying in bed, Nima whispered to herself, "Be careful," because she knew the danger. She knew what happened when people crossed lines that weren't meant to be crossed. He was Korean, rich, admired. She was foreign, black, always one step away from being an outsider. And yet, her heart betrayed her. Every time she thought of his voice, the way his eyes lingered, the smallest of smiles he gave her when no one else was watching, she felt a warmth spreading through her chest. It was the kind of warmth that could set her whole world on fire. The turning point came one late evening. The library was nearly empty, the campus cloaked in silence. Nima gathered her books, rubbing her tired eyes, when she heard footsteps behind her. Tae-hyun. He stood there, hands shoved into his pockets, his hair falling over his forehead. "You shouldn't walk back to the dorm alone," he said. "It's late. I can handle myself. I'll walk with you anyway." She wanted to refuse, but something in his tone left no room for argument. They walked side by side through the quiet pathways, street lamps casting golden pools of light. "Why are you being nice to me now?" Nima asked finally, her voice cutting through the stillness. Tae-hyun slowed, looking at her with an intensity that made her breath hitch. "Because I was wrong," he said simply. "And because I can't stop thinking about you." The words hung in the air between them, dangerous, forbidden, electric. Nima's pulse pounded in her ears. She should walk away. She should remind him of the cruelty, the mockery, the way he had made her feel so small. Instead, she whispered, "Don't." But her voice trembled, and they both knew she didn't mean it. Tae-hyun stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the faint cologne on his shirt, see the flecks of brown in his dark eyes. "Nima," he murmured, her name a secret on his lips. And for the first time since arriving in Seoul, she didn't feel invisible. She felt seen. That was the night everything began to change. The rain had long since passed, but the memory of that night lingered in Nima's mind like a secret she wasn't ready to admit aloud. Tae-hyun's words, "I can't stop thinking about you," echoed inside her chest, stirring something she tried to smother with logic and fear. It was wrong. It was reckless. And yet, when she closed her eyes, she saw only him. The change between them didn't go unnoticed. In lectures, he no longer sat across the aisle but beside her, his long frame angled slightly toward hers. When she struggled with a concept, he leaned close, his low voice guiding her through formulas and case studies until she understood. In the cafeteria, he sometimes joined her at the corner table, ignoring the whispers that rippled across the room. One afternoon, as they left class together, Nima heard it clearly. "Why's Tae-hyun hanging out with her?" A girl whispered to her friend, her tone sharp with disdain. Her friend giggled. "Maybe he lost a bet." Nima's stomach nodded, But before she could quicken her steps, Tae-hyun stopped. He turned, his gaze cold and sharp enough to slice through the gossipers. "Do you have something to say to me?" he asked flatly. The girls froze, stammering, "And no, Appa." Before scurrying away, Tae-hyun looked back at Nima, his jaw tight. Ignore them. But Nima couldn't. She had grown used to the whispers. But now, with Tae-hyun by her side, the hostility sharpened. The more attention he gave her, the more the campus seemed to turn against her. Their friendship deepened quietly, dangerously. Late-night study sessions stretched into conversations about their lives. Her childhood in Nairobi, the way she missed her mother's cooking, his strained relationship with his strict father who had mapped out every detail of his future. "You're lucky," Nima said one evening, leaning against the library wall. "Your path is so clear." He gave a bitter laugh. "It's not luck, it's a prison." She studied him, surprised by the rawness in his tone. For the first time, she realized he wasn't just the golden boy everyone adored. He was carrying his own burdens, shackled by expectations. In that moment, she felt closer to him than she had to anyone else in Seoul. The first time they touched, it was almost accidental. They were leaving the library, their arms brushing as they walked. But instead of pulling away, Tae-hyun's fingers found hers, tentative at first, then curling firmly around her hand. Nima's breath caught. She glanced up at him, but his gaze was fixed ahead, his jaw set as though daring anyone to challenge the simple act of walking beside her. Her pulse thrummed with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. She should have pulled her hand away. Instead, she let it stay, their fingers interlaced in the quiet night. The kiss came days later. They had been studying in Tae-hyun's dorm room, papers spread across his desk. The air was heavy with the scent of coffee and the low hum of music from his speaker. At some point, the conversation drifted away from academics. Nima found herself laughing, really laughing, at one of his dry remarks. He looked at her then, his smile fading into something deeper, more intense. The silence stretched, filled only by the sound of her own heartbeat. Slowly, almost hesitantly, he leaned closer. "Nima," he murmured, her name a prayer and a warning all at once. She should have stopped him. She should have reminded him of everything stacked against them. The stares, the gossip, the risk. But when his lips brushed hers, soft and searching, every protest dissolved. The kiss deepened, his hand cradling the back of her head, pulling her closer. She felt the heat of him, the urgency, the unspoken need that mirrored her own. When they finally broke apart, breathless, he pressed his forehead against hers. "This is wrong," she whispered. "I know," he said, his voice hoarse, "but I don't care." That night marked the point of no return. Their stolen touches grew bolder, their kisses longer. What began as whispers in hidden corners became nights spent tangled in each other's arms, crossing lines neither could pretend didn't exist. It wasn't just passion, it was escape. For Tae-hyun, from the suffocating grip of his father's control. For Nima, from the loneliness of being unwanted, unseen. Together they found fire, and that fire consumed them. But fire always leaves ashes. And soon, the consequences of their secret would change everything. Their kiss was only the beginning. From that night onward, their relationship unfolded in stolen moments. Late-night walks, whispered conversations in empty lecture halls, lingering touches when no one was watching. What began as curiosity turned into hunger, and soon into something neither could deny. They crossed boundaries quietly, recklessly. Nima found herself in his dorm more often than her own, their books forgotten as passion consumed them. Each time she promised herself it would be the last. Each time she returned. Tae-hyun was different with her. With his friends, he was the golden boy, confident, untouchable. But in the quiet, behind locked doors, he was vulnerable. He spoke of the pressure his family placed on him, the suffocating expectations to uphold their reputation. "You make me forget all that," he whispered one night, his arm draped across her bare shoulder. But Nima couldn't forget. She knew what people whispered when they saw them together. She knew she was gambling with her future. And yet she couldn't walk away. The signs came slowly at first. Fatigue that lingered. Nausea in the mornings. A missed cycle. Nima told herself it was stress, the adjustment of a new country, the endless pressure of school. But when the second cycle came and went, her fear crystallized into something undeniable. One afternoon, she stood in the cramped dormitory bathroom, clutching the pregnancy test in trembling hands. The two pink lines stared back at her, mocking, final. Her breath hitched. The room spun. She sank to the floor, pressing her palm against her flat stomach. 1,000 thoughts collided. Her scholarship, her parents back home, the whispers, the shame, and above it all, Tae-hyun. What would he say? She told him that evening. They met in his room as always. His smile faltered the moment he saw her expression. What's wrong? Nima's lips trembled. I'm pregnant. Silence. For a heartbeat, she thought he hadn't heard her. Then Tae-hyun stepped back, his face draining of color. No, he whispered. That's not possible. It is, she said, her voice breaking. I took the test. Twice. His hands raked through his hair, his breath coming fast. You don't understand. My father, my family. If they find out. Nima flinched. This isn't about your father. This is our child. But Tae-hyun shook his head. Panic etched across his features. No, Nima. We can't. You have to get rid of it. The words sliced through her. She stared at him, tears welling in her eyes. You're serious? He looked away. I can't be tied down. Not now. Not like this. Her chest caved. The boy who had kissed her like she was the only person in the world now couldn't even meet her gaze. When she left his room that night, she carried more than her books. She carried the weight of betrayal, and a new life growing inside her. The fire that had once consumed them had turned to ash. And from those ashes, Nima would be forced to rise alone. The days after her confession blurred into shadows. Tae-hyun stopped answering her texts. In the cafeteria, where he once sat beside her, he now sat across the room, his gaze sliding past her as though she were a stranger. In lectures, he avoided her eyes. When their hands had once brushed under the desk, now he shoved his into his pockets, distant and cold. The whispers returned, sharper than ever. She trapped him, you know? Foreign girls do that. Serves him right. What did he expect? Did you see her stomach yet? I heard she's keeping it. Every word was a knife. One evening, Nima gathered her courage and went to his dorm. She knocked softly, her hand trembling. The door opened a crack, and Tae-hyun's face appeared, his eyes hard. We need to talk, she whispered. There's nothing to talk about. Yes, there is, she insisted, forcing her way inside. This is your child too. You can't just pretend nothing happened. Tae-hyun's jaw clenched. You don't understand what this will do to me, to my family. If my father finds out. Nima's voice cracked. And what about me? What about what this will do to me? I came here alone. I have no one, and now. He cut her off, his tone icy. I never asked for this. You should handle it. Her chest hollowed. She stared at him, searching for the boy who once kissed her with such fire, who once held her hand in the rain. But all she found was fear and denial. You're a coward, she whispered. His eyes flickered, but he said nothing. When she left that night, she knew she was truly alone. The pregnancy was not easy. Morning sickness drained her strength. Fatigue clung to her bones. Her scholarship nearly slipped away as she struggled to keep up with classes. Professors frowned when she asked for extensions. Some whispered about her irresponsibility. Even walking across campus became an ordeal. Students stared openly as her belly grew. Some laughed. Others muttered insults in Korean, thinking she wouldn't understand. But Nima refused to crumble. Each time despair threatened, she remembered her father's words before she left home. You're destined for more. She studied late into the nights, her swollen ankles propped on pillows, determination burning brighter than the shame others tried to place on her. The only kindness came from her quiet roommate, Sujin. One evening, as Nima lay curled in pain, Sujin brought her tea and sat beside her. "Why are you helping me?" Nima asked softly. Sujin shrugged. "Because no one else will. And because you deserve better than how they treat you." Tears pricked Nima's eyes. For the first time in months, she didn't feel completely invisible. The day of labor came during her final exams. She had pushed herself too hard, her belly tight with contractions as she scribbled answers onto paper. By the time she left the hall, sweat beading her forehead, she collapsed outside. The ambulance ride was a blur. Pain tore through her, endless waves that left her gasping, clutching the sheets. Alone, terrified, she whispered prayers to a God she hoped still remembered her. Hours later, as dawn broke over Seoul, a cry pierced the sterile air of the hospital room. A girl, tiny, perfect, her skin a warm shade of brown, her hair already curling against her delicate head. Nima held her close, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Angel," she whispered. "My angel." In that moment, the loneliness faded. She wasn't alone anymore. Raising Angel while finishing school was a battle, but Nima fought with everything she had. She worked part-time jobs, carried textbooks in one hand and her baby in the other. She studied while Angel napped, wrote essays with one arm cradling her daughter. She endured stares at the daycare, pitying looks from professors, judgment from strangers. But slowly victory took shape. She passed her classes. She defended her thesis. She graduated with honors, Angel in her arms as she walked across the stage. The applause wasn't for her alone. It was for the journey, the resilience, the fire she had refused to let burn out. By the time Angel was 3, Nima had built a new life. She worked at a growing international firm, her skills recognized beyond the boundaries of prejudice. She rented a small but cozy apartment near the city center. Angel filled the rooms with laughter, her curious eyes and boundless energy reminding Nima every day why she had chosen strength over despair. Tae-hyun was a memory, a scar, a wound that had healed but never fully faded. Or so she thought, because fate had a cruel way of circling back. And one ordinary afternoon, in the middle of a bustling shopping mall, her past stood before her once more. The shopping mall was alive with weekend noise, children laughing, vendors calling out special deals, music drifting from clothing stores. Nima walked slowly, Angel's small hand tucked securely into hers. Angel was 3 now, her curls bouncing as she skipped along, her little voice piping up, "Mommy, can we get ice cream?" Nima smiled, her heart softening at the sight of her daughter's bright eyes. "After groceries, Angel. Promise." They turned into the toy section, Angel darting toward a display of stuffed animals. Nima followed, her gaze warm, unaware of the pair of eyes that had frozen on them from across the aisle. Tae-hyun had only meant to stop by the mall briefly. His father's company kept him busy, meetings stacked endlessly, but he had stolen an hour for himself. As he strolled past the toy section, his steps faltered. A little girl was laughing, holding up a teddy bear almost as big as she was. And for a moment the world tilted. Her face, her eyes, her smile, so hauntingly familiar it sent a chill down his spine. Tae-hyun's breath caught in his throat. It was like looking at a smaller version of himself. He stood rooted to the spot as the girl ran back toward her mother, tugging on her arm. And then he saw her, Nima. She was older, stronger somehow, her beauty sharpened by years of independence. She carried herself with quiet grace, her dark skin glowing under the fluorescent lights, her curls framing her face. But the sight of her sent a pang straight to his chest. Memories slammed into him. Her tears the night she told him she was pregnant, the betrayal in her voice, the softness of her lips, the fire in her eyes. And now a child. His child. Nima turned, sensing the weight of a stare. Her breath hitched as her gaze collided with his. For a moment the mall vanished. It was just the two of them, locked in silence. "Tae-hyun?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Angel tugged at her sleeve, oblivious. "Mommy, who's that man?" Nima snapped back to herself, her grip tightening on her daughter's hand. "Nobody, baby. Let's go." But before she could move, Tae-hyun stepped forward. Nima. His voice was low, urgent, trembling in a way she had never heard before. She spun around, her eyes blazing. Stay away. Nima, please. There's nothing to say. Her tone was sharp, final. His gaze flicked to Angel, who was clutching her mother's leg, her wide eyes curious. Tae-hyun swallowed hard. She's mine, isn't she? Nima's lips trembled, but she held her ground. You lost the right to ask that question 3 years ago. The words hit him like a blow. He flinched, guilt flooding his face. Nima, I was wrong, he said hoarsely. I was a coward. I let fear control me. But I see her now. I see you. And I can't walk away again. Her laugh was bitter, sharp. You think you can just come back? After abandoning us? After leaving me to raise her alone? Finish school alone? Survive alone? I regret it every day, he whispered. Regret doesn't change the past. For a long moment, they stood in silence, the air between them heavy with years of pain. Angel tugged at Nima's hand again. Mommy, I want ice cream. Nima swallowed the lump in her throat and forced a smile for her daughter. Of course, baby. She turned without another glance at Tae-hyun and walked away, her shoulders straight, her head high. But as she disappeared into the crowd, Tae-hyun remained frozen, his heart pounding with a truth he could no longer ignore. Angel was his daughter, and he wasn't going to lose them again. That night, Nima sat on her couch, staring at the ceiling while Angel slept peacefully in her room. Her chest ached. Why now? Why after all these years did fate bring him back? She hated him. She needed to hate him. But deep inside, beneath the scars, the sight of him had awakened something she thought long dead, and that terrified her more than anything. For weeks, Tae-hyun lingered at the edges of Nima's world. He sent flowers she never accepted, letters she tore apart without reading, calls she let ring until silence swallowed the room. Yet still, he tried, appearing at the daycare to wave at Angel from a respectful distance, showing up at the cafe across from her office but never crossing the street, as though waiting for permission that never came. Angel, innocent and curious, asked one day, Mommy, why does that man always smile at me? Nima's chest tightened. He's someone who made mistakes. Angel tilted her head, her curls bouncing. Does he love me? Nima froze. The question sliced her open, because she didn't know the answer. One evening, there was a knock at her apartment door. When she opened it, Tae-hyun stood there, not with roses or apologies, but with a small box. I don't expect forgiveness, he said quietly, but I want the truth to be yours. Inside the box were letters, dozens of them, worn and folded, all addressed to her. My father, Tae-hyun said, his voice strained. He found out. He threatened to cut me off, to ruin you, to have you expelled if I stayed with you. I was weak, Nima. I chose fear. But I wrote to you every week. I just never had the courage to send them. Nima's throat closed. She touched one of the envelopes with trembling fingers, her anger warring with disbelief. You could have fought for me, she whispered. I know. His voice cracked. And I'll live with that failure forever. But I can fight now. For you. For her. The silence between them was heavy. Nima wanted to slam the door, to shield the fragile life she had built. But then Angel's small footsteps padded into the hall. Mommy? She asked sleepily, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Her eyes shifted to Tae-hyun, curious, unafraid. Is that my daddy? Nima's breath caught. She had never used the word around Angel. But children knew. Somehow they always knew. Tears blurred her vision as she knelt down, cupping her daughter's face. Yes, baby, she whispered. That's your daddy. Angel turned, her little voice bright and sure. Hi, Daddy. Tae-hyun's knees buckled. He sank to the floor, tears streaming freely as he whispered, Hi, Angel. Nima watched, her heart warring with itself. This was the man who had abandoned her, the man who had shattered her when she needed him most. Yet this was also the man who had just broken open in front of their daughter, not with excuses but with truth. For the first time, she saw not the arrogant boy from campus, nor the coward who ran, but a father desperate to make amends. She swallowed hard, her voice steady. You don't get me back, Tae-hyun. Not yet, maybe not ever. But if you want to be in Angel's life, that door is open. His eyes shone with both grief and gratitude. That's all I ask. Months later, at Angel's preschool recital, Nima sat in the front row. Angel stood proudly on stage, singing her little heart out. And beside Nima, at a respectful distance but undeniably there, sat Tae-hyun, his eyes glistening with pride. As Angel's voice rang out, Nima felt something unexpected stir inside her. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the fragile possibility of a future where scars didn't define them, and where their daughter grew up loved by them both. It wasn't the love story Nima had imagined when she first arrived in Seoul. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and sometimes that was enough. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more interesting and captivating series like this.